faith has been such like an important part of my life, and it started with my grandpa. My whole family we grew up Pentecostal, so hellfire and brimstone, crazy people running down pews, speaking in tongues, the whole 9 yards. So we had that in our life from earliest age, as early as I can remember, singing in the front row. We had a really small congregation, and my brothers and I would go and sing in the front row because we were the only members of Sunday school. So we'd sing in the front row, "This Little Light of Mine," all these little church songs, and it became part of not only my speaking engagement, my ability to be able to talk in front of the camera, in front of people, but it became part of like a huge part of my life, both consistently and with my schedule as well. And it's something that always stuck. Like a lot of people who grow up with like family members that are pastors typically tend to either stray away from faith or try to latch onto something else because they feel like it's more of an obligation. But my parents did such a great job. My parents and my grandparents did such a great job of not making us not feel like it was an obligation, but rather it was something that really defined who we were. It never felt like a chore or a task to go to church. And I know every single kid would have those days where like, oh man, I just want to sleep in on Sunday. I don't want to go to church. I don't want to. And yes, there were those days when we did that, but in retrospect, I don't think there was ever a moment where I questioned my faith and I didn't want to go because I didn't love the messages that were being spoken or being taught. But it's just such an integral part to where I'm at now. Where I'm at with my relationship with my wife, where I'm at with my business, where I'm at with my business relationships, and that's such a huge part of life. Like there's, especially in the world that we live in today, and how disgusting and crazy everybody acts, and everybody expects other people to act. Like you look at all these things that people say in the media, and all these people that we should be respecting, all these political leaders, people that are taking very high positions, they're doing and saying it, and it's like, man, if you had the same upbringing that I had, and you were able to learn how much the Lord loves you and what He's done, and you were able to put your faith in Him, you realize like how precious, not only how precious life is, but how it's all in His hand. Like there's so many people that are worrying about today's leaders and putting all this stress in and all this focus on the leaders that are in our society today, but they're not the ones that are controlling like our future. They're not the ones controlling what happens. Like everything's in God's hands, and I think that's one of my approaches that's helped me so much with my relationships, with life, with my business, is that I know that it's not my will, it's His will. It's not the will of President Trump or anybody else that's calling the shots and making legislative moves, and it's they have nothing to do. Like, yes, in immediate sense, pass a law, great, okay. If it's bad, if it's good, it's really not the end game. And I wish that people in society weren't so short-sighted and had a bigger picture and saw like how God's got our backs in literally everything throughout this life. And like for me, I wake up every single day just feeling blessed and fortunate to be able to do what I do, but also knowing that I have a future in heaven because of my commitment, my faith to God. And like just having that having that reassurance that you don't need anything else other than that, like makes it so easy to go through life being happy and being excited for every new thing, and really focusing on the relationships that you have with others, and not being so paranoid about what so-and-so is doing. It gives you so much more time and ability to focus on his relationship, your relationship with him, and your relationship with those that are close with you. So it's funny, like looking or thinking about, me growing up, with my grandpa. Obviously, my grandpa is a pastor. My great grandfather was also a pastor, and when I was growing up, and he passed away, I believe when I was like 8 or 9, very young. He kept on telling me, Jordan, you're going to be a pastor. You're going to be a pastor. You're going to be a pastor. And I thought, Grandpa, you're crazy, man. There's no way. Like, I'll take singing in Sunday school. Like, that's as far as I'm going with this, and in retro and looking back, and it's like, man, it kind of came into fruition a little bit. Obviously, I'm not, I don't have the tutelage of a pastor. I didn't go to seminary school. But I do have an audience, I do have a congregation that I'm able to speak to, and if I can shed, a little bit of my faith and, a lot of bit of how it, has impacted my life, then that's kind of me preaching to, to my congregation. So I feel like, just the fact that my faith has been able to be such an impact, and I can possibly, give that same perspective as to how it's helped me both on the court, off the court, through relationships, and all my failures and successes. I think that's something that can go and stretch a lot further than what I'm able to just teach from a basketball skill set. So it's had a huge impact on me, and I thank God for the people He's put in my life, and the opportunities that He's blessed me with, because I'm nothing without Him. A huge aspect of Christianity is being able to see how the Lord works, and be able to notice, like, first and foremost, like, I'm a huge believer in the fact that everything happens for a reason. The Lord has a purpose for everything that happens on the earth, for the people that are put in your life, for the events that that happen. In 2012 or 2013, I experienced, kind of an event that really shaped my life. And it was coming at a time that was really good, really good for me. I was just starting off my training business. I was just, kind of getting, my feet wet in the industry, and I just got into a very committed relationship with my now wife, and our relationship was really, really forming. And I got into a motorcycle accident. And this motorcycle accident, I just coming out of a training session. I had basketball shorts on, cut off shirt. I threw on a sweatshirt because it gets real cold on the freeway, and I had a helmet on, of course. And I was riding my motorcycle on the freeway, and I was going about 70 miles an hour. I was in the slow lane, and I looked down at my speedometer because I saw a cop that just a couple exits back. And when I looked up, there was a truck that had slowed down to about 30, 35 miles an hour. And by the time I looked up, I was about 10 feet from the truck. So literally just lost all control. I froze, didn't know what to do, took my hands off the handlebars because I knew that I was gonna have an impact. My bike hit the back of the truck. I hit my bike, gas tank, crushed my gas tank with my pelvis. I flipped over my handlebars and then landed in the bed of the truck. Now, if I would have hit like a Prius, which is like every other car out here in California, or any other like small vehicle, I probably would have flipped over it, landed in front of them, and they would have ran me over, and that would have been the end of my story. But I didn't. The Lord like saved me in that moment, and it's crazy to think, and I get goosebumps just retelling the story every time, because a lot of people might have seen that as like a huge setback, and they're like, why would this happen to me, Lord? And what are you doing? I couldn't train for a couple weeks. I actually did train for a couple weeks. I just sat in a chair while I was directing my sessions, but I walked out of that with some minor things, but I walked out of that. I was able to walk out of that situation. Like, that was just such a moment. It was such an instance where I was like, man, the Lord has bigger plans for me. The Lord has a huge purpose for my life, and for what I do. And it was actually that next day, or sorry, that was a Monday. The following Sunday, we went to church, and I hobbled in there, and the message was on don't put things off till someday, because someday never falls on any day of the week. And I was just so caught off guard by it. I literally just was hanging on every word that was spoken during that message, because I realized, and this a lot of times this is what happens in church, you realize that the message is for you. And that one, it could have been for other people, but I thought that God was speaking purely and intently to me with that message. It was so impactful at that moment to make sure that I lived every day of my life knowing that that could be my last day, that knowing that I'm not going to leave or procrastinate anything. And it was that year, like literally after that event, where I completely started transforming my approach to the events that I participate in, to my church experience, to my relationships. So it was right after that happened, I went on Monday, literally the day after, I went to I went to Robbins Brothers. I literally bought an engagement ring for my wife, and I asked her, I proposed to her a few months later. But and a little backstory to that is, every day during our relationship, about 4 months into our relationship, I asked my wife to marry me. Just super corny. Every day I would ask her in a different way, just because I knew I was sincere about it, obviously, and I knew that she was going to be my life partner. I knew she was going to be the one. So I had that kind of constantly building up. So like when I heard the message about don't put things off till someday, it was like, wow, yeah, it really doesn't make sense to continue to put it off when I know for a fact that this woman is going to be with me for the rest of my life. So it's crazy, how little things, and that was a big thing obviously, but how little things transpire, and you can see, if you have your faith, you can see how the Lord is meaning or intending for that thing to affect your life, to impact your life. And part of our duty as Christians is to be able to realize, what those events are, and then how they should be intended, how they should be interpreted, so that way you can live and continue to grow in your faith and live a faith-based life and a strong Christian life.